Greetings, family. Welcome back to the Learning Channel. We are here to talk about June Truth. June Truth. Yes, it's a play on words dealing with Juneteenth. We are 6 months into the year, and there's a whole lot that has happened in the 6 months. So I'm just going to speak about June right now so I can move forward. When we speak about truth, truth is nothing but the perception of what you see with your own eyes. That's all truth is. And so I wanted to share some things with you today or to discuss this topic of discussion about what is truth. Now, when I say Juneteenth, one fantastic book, short, small, 130 pages, by Annette Gordon Reed called On Juneteenth. So just the first part. To my surprise, some years back, I began to hear people outside of my home state, Texas, talk about and celebrate the holiday Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. Shortened to Juneteenth, was the day that enslaved African Americans in Texas were told that slavery had ended. 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed, and just over 2 months after Confederate General Robert E. Lee had surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox. A book by Stetson Kennedy called After Appomattox, How the South Won the War. This gets into the whole lost cause that explains how the Confederacy dominated history, and we now have these problems in our history. So now the question is, what is truth? What is truth? So the subtitle there is, Only in History is Accuracy So Political. That means, do you or don't you tell the truth? I no longer really listen to National Public Radio because of the positions they've taken on certain items. Some of the news stories seem to be not dealing with the truth. And it's interesting because the most recent CEO or chief executive for NPR is Katherine Mayer. She is ex-Council on Foreign Relations. I guess you can't say ex because you've had that impact working with Council on Foreign Relations. You stick with them. And that Council on Foreign Relations is not good for a lot of African countries or non-white aligned communities. So she has been criticized. She's even had her senior editor resign from her hiring. Critics are also demanding NPR have its own government funding withdrawn for prioritizing politics over journalism. So she's not really interested in the truth. She's interested in just hearing both sides of a story. That's problematic in this day and age when we're trying to figure out what is truth. What also spurred me along to do this particular presentation was Thought Police. I came along and looked at a YouTube that was presented 3 years ago, and they said that it has been removed from my channel. They said it violated the medical information policy. So we're dealing with, what is truth? Was it artificial intelligence that flagged this with a particular word that said remove this particular video? Either way, wow, someone took, for some entity, some framework, took the authority to remove content that I was sharing with you and the people. So the title was certainly called Anatomy of an Epidemic, Weapons of Global Destruction, but I find it interesting that several years later, now it's being removed. Now, you know I've written several books. One book I've written is called Pigment Power, Topics on Melanin in Science and Health. In my chapter on astrobiology and melanin, that is chapter 11, I have a portion in here where I talk about the global climate crisis. I say in one of these passages. Today, the corporate-controlled news media will not show melanin-dominant people being displaced by this climate crisis, and this is tragic. Because most of the stories we may see problems with non-white communities and what they're going through with the flooding and the problems with the fires. And guess what? There are massive countries and melanin-dominated societies that are also being decimated, but you're not hearing those stories. The media ignores the reality that in places like the Melanesian Islands and Australia, there are African people who are being decimated. Sadly, many islands in the Pacific Ocean are sinking underwater. Tsunamis are causing displacement in Indonesia, and the fires in Australia and North America leave people with nowhere to go. In ancient times, circumnavigation was one of the solutions to survive these cataclysmic events. Therefore, the reader should now visualize how and why the African presence was expanded throughout the world, because you have to now seek somewhere else to live if you're now being flooded out. So I'm just going to present some scenarios that are real life that are occurring right now in June. The world has changed. The deniers are basically dying. I mean, you got people being flooded out, people who discouraged discussion on climate change, discouraged any statements that the global crisis is in existence in terms of the way that the climate is causing fires and floods and earthquakes. And so people say there's nothing going on. Can you imagine whatever city you live in, it being underwater like this? You can't function. It's pretty much ruined. So just this June, halfway through the year of 2024, flooding in northwest Iowa, middle America, not many black people there, caused by heavy rainfall has impacted 1,900 properties, leaving hundreds destroyed. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds told reporters Sunday. So this is now, natural disasters don't care who you are. Black, white, red, yellow, orange, whatever color you are, you're going to be impacted. And for us to ignore this is a travesty. During a media briefing, Reynolds said there had been 250 water rescues on Saturday, and over 1,000 residents had to be sheltered overnight. Beyond there in Iowa, we're talking about Midwest America. Historic floods washed away homes and memories in Iowa and Minnesota. Brazil, record floods that killed over 170 people and displaced 500,000 in southern Brazil, a warning sign of more disasters to come throughout the Americas because of climate change. And basically, as we ignore this and put blinders on, it's coming to your neighborhood soon. Let me see if I can show this for you. This is showing what's happening in Brazil. And for me, I have spent time in Brazil, and the people are so beautiful, loving, caring, and you just feel sad for these environments that are being decimated. Watch this video here. Now, this is the person who's now like a director reviewing the communities and what's actually happening.
Wake up. The record floods in Brazil this year are a major sign of more disasters to come throughout the Americas, says Andrew Harper, a special advisor on climate action to the United Nations Refugee Agency. Floods have displaced nearly 500,000 people and killed over 170 in southern Brazil this year.
It's a warning signal, but we've been seeing warning signals now for 5-10 years.
He visited a neighborhood in Porto Alegre left devastated by the floods. Residents have not returned even after the flood waters subsided, and many are still living in shelters. The UN Refugee Agency is helping the local government build temporary housing.
It was a ghost town because you had, it was underwater for almost 40 days. And so there wasn't even any rats running around. Everything had died.
Roughly 389,000 people remain displaced in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Local officials say it's the worst disaster in the region's history. Some residents may never return, Harper says, having been forced to move due to repeated floods. Scientists say climate change made the flooding twice as likely to happen. Harper says governments need to understand where the people most vulnerable to climate change live and include them in their climate plans.
We're seeing the emergence in Brazil of what we may be seeing throughout the Americas. So to ignore this, they do it at their own peril. At what point do you basically have to sort of slap somebody in the face and say, well, wake up?
No, that's what we're talking about here. Devastation going on and people acting like it doesn't exist. So beyond the flooding in Brazil, you now have heat issues. Which is more than 500 die in 6 days as Pakistan swelters. You can go ahead and look on the internet for the images there. The heat is on in Mecca. People made the pilgrimage to Hajj, 123 degrees heat. People died just going there to try to, follow their religious priorities in their rituals to go around the Mecca in Mecca. Man, people dying just from doing that because it's 120 degrees heat. And you know where it is, wherever you may be living right now. The heat is on in many parts of the world during this summer. In Asia, they got hit pretty hard with heat. So the heat is on. The floods are on. And so now as we deal with the heat and the floods, guess what? These other items that are in politics become irrelevant when you deal with the reality that you might not have a place to live. So I'm presenting some information here about politics, and I'm going to give you some books that you can go ahead and read, and we'll conclude because I want to make this as short as possible because we have to get to work to survive. It's that bad out there. You have in Atlanta, we just had the debate going on between the two presidential candidates, and you have black representatives trying to get black people to vote for certain individuals. So tensions flare at Atlanta area event as black Republicans urge black men to ditch Democrats. So this becomes very political. The event was billed as the Congress, Cognac, and Cigars, and is moderated by Sage Steele. And we all know she's got some issues with her identity, and she doesn't really want to be associated with being black because she got a white parent. And so for her, it's like, well, I'm both. Okay, whatever. But to pick this person to be this moderator for this event just creates more problems because the other individual who's involved in this was someone who said that Jim Crow was, a time to look at in history. And so you got a lot of confusion going on with people pushing black or melanin-dominated people to vote for a crook, a criminal, versus someone that may have some integrity, although they're old and performing like a ghost. But when I say that, I'm talking about the debate, the first debate, they said it was pretty bad for the ghost. He did not do too well against the criminal. And for us to understand this is America's best. So the prediction will be Trump will be president come November. Because the society that we're living in is not dealing with reality and truth. They'd rather have, a character rather than having people that are dealing with true knowledge to, help rectify your situation. They'd rather have a character, and that's what's going to go on. They're going to select, in my opinion, a criminal, and that's going to be how the world will view the United States from the outside, that internally you guys are corrupt, and it's unfortunate that's going to happen. But Biden didn't do too well having a debate against this individual. In politics, Jamal Bowman is a political figure in New York who was ousted by a Jewish organization called AIPAC because Bowman talked about how Israel is creating genocide against a certain people, and the world sees it, but people aren't dealing with the truth. So Jamal Bowman was part of the new so-called squad there in Congress of individuals who are doing positive things to make change away from the milky white way of looking at the world. So for us to be in 2024, we're only now electing 2 white men as potential candidates for president shows that we are not progressing, regress, and the candidates that you see are the worst that we could possibly have. I thought it was interesting that Bowman was married to an Oppenheimer. That sounds like a Jewish European controlling name, but evidently Alyssa Oppenheimer is an African American woman. So Bowman, unfortunately, did not get his opportunity to continue on in Congress, but that's what's going on when we talk about what is the truth. He's talking about the truth, and he was ridiculed for talking about the truth. Just this June, I asked the question, is this justice or travesty? Julian Assange, who has been battling for 12 to basically 14 years with the United States, actually is now free. Julian Assange, if it wasn't for him, in WikiLeaks, we would not know about some of the devastation that this country has done to innocent people, war crimes, and a host of other things. But he has been released from prison, and he's now going back to Australia, and that's a good thing. The point is that he has had 12 to 14 wasted years of his life battling truth. He's presenting truth, but he's being attacked. So is it justice that he's now freed, or is it travesty that he was being attacked? So justice or a travesty if someone's dealing with truth. Another issue of justice or travesty just happened this June. And I take this one personally because the Atlanta public school system was under scrutiny and was being attacked by the so-called enterprise by saying that these black teachers were helping students cheat. And throughout the country, this is the only public school system that was attacked by the government. And one of my students that I have taught in the past, named Shawnee Robinson, was the youngest person on that teaching squad that was being attacked. Well, just today, this month, she's been now given probation and will not be going to jail for this erroneous claim that she was helping first graders cheat on some exam. She was railroaded, but again, I'm just happy that right now she's able to be free and not go to jail. So for her, she was being, I guess, not that she was attacked, but Fannie Willis, who you know is being involved in the Trump prosecution for his illegal deeds there in Georgia. She was the lead prosecutor. Terrible situation. Another black woman attacking other black woman, saying that there was some like RICO Act where they were attacking the people for some conspiracy. Terrible situation. So we see what Fannie Willis is caught up right now. And also someone else who did not assist in helping out with my student was Stacy Abrams. Bad situation. She didn't help out. All this could have been avoided months ago, but that was not the case. So this is my student, Shawnee Robinson, who's now gratefully free because she was just dealing with the truth. But what, again, is truth? Let's listen to her story.
To lighten her sentencing
ATS cheating scandal.
She's one of 35 educators accused of changing student test answers in 2009. Channel 2 Action News uncovered the scandal.
Tonight, Channel 2's Courtney Francisco live at Atlanta Public School headquarters, where the case is now over for that particular teacher.
It's over for her and 4 others, and she expressed gratefulness and relief. Inside her home, a former first-grade teacher opened up about living with the threat of major prison time for the past decade.
I have 2 children, so the thought of being separated from them was very hard. And
Shawnee Robinson was among 35 teachers and administrators in Atlanta public schools indicted, 11 convicted of changing student state test answers for money. Some took plea deals and sentence agreements between 2013 and 2015. Some served prison time, and 5 were in the appeal process until Tuesday, when a judge said they could avoid prison after apologizing.
I sincerely apologize.
I do believe that the students of Atlanta deserve apology. I've been very outspoken about this case in the past, about public education. And I believe that our public education system was designed for them to fail in the first place.
A defense attorney in the case, Gerald Griggs, told me he's relieved the latest batch of 5 avoided prison.
They were not the main ones who were cheating.
I reached out to former prosecutors in the case. No comment on the latest sentence. Robinson says it does include at least 3 years probation, community service, and a fine.
And I'm just so grateful that I was even given the opportunity to take the prison sentence off of the table.
And in the past, prosecutors have told us that this left students unprepared and robbed of an education. Reporting live downtown Atlanta, Courtney Francisco, Channel 2 Action News.
Take that story personally because I knew Shawnee Robinson's father, who was a assistant, a helper at Madu bookstore in Atlanta. And when we start talking about books, she wrote a book to document her story. None of the above, the untold story of the Atlanta public schools, cheating scandal, corporate greed, and the criminalization of educators. Sad scenario, but I'm happy that she is now not going to jail for something that she did not do. She was railroaded, and many of those educators were railroaded. But check out her book called None of the Above by Shawnee Robinson. The very first comment or statement that's on this YouTube presentation about the truth and how history is the only one that has accuracy, but people don't want to talk about accuracy in history. Lies My Teacher Told Me by James Loewen. This is a must read. Everything your American history textbook got wrong. So as an educator, he's breaking it down. I mean, he's showing and describing the problems that are going on with the school system and why kids don't want to read, don't want to study. This is 1995. He passed away, unfortunately, 2021. But this is a must book to read. The table of contents has Handicapped by History. 1493, The True Importance of Christopher Columbus. The Truth About the First Thanksgiving. Red Eyes, Gone with the Wind. John Brown and Abraham Lincoln. The Land of Opportunity, Watching Big Brother. Down the Memory Hole, The Disappearance of the Recent Past. Progress is our most important product. And for me, the most important chapter here was chapter 11. Why is history taught like this? So he breaks it down and explains how, publishers and how certain communities push certain agendas. And that's the reason why we have problems today in 2024 with this opportunity to teach kids something in school, but you got people that are far removed from talking about truth. The American Rule. This is an excellent book by this guy named Jared Yates Sexton. He's a scholar writer here in Georgia, but how a nation conquered the world but failed its people. He explains this whole phenomena behind the evangelicals supporting someone like Trump. Here you are, a spiritual focused group, the evangelicals, but you now behind a criminal that questions your whole scope of who you are. He calls the approach that the white identity evangelicals, he talks about, and he's been ridiculed as a white man for writing this. The narrative of American exceptionalism, beginning with the founding of the United States has provided cover for aristocracy at home and imperialism abroad. That's why it's problematic with the things that Biden has been doing as president, and the world is looking, and it's not looking good. Here's a comment about how Hitler perceived America, coming from Jared. The vision that Hitler gave his followers was shaped by his perception of the United States, a nation he saw as having pioneered the type of racist, stratified society he hoped to achieve and improve upon. His plan resembled the Confederate States of America, which he praised as the beginning of a great new social order based on the principle of slavery and inequality. Hitler lamented that the Civil War had led to the disintegration of the Confederacy, but still admired how Jim Crow and legal segregation had created an ironclad racial hierarchy in the United States, leading him to believe in the possibility of a new world of white supremacy immortalized in law as well as violence. So it explains how we've gotten to a point that Trump will be president in 2024 again in a society that is not dealing with truth. A few more books. Howard French, black man, wrote a book called Born in Blackness, Africa, Africans, and the Making of the Modern World. Now, this is interesting because it talks about, giving us a different perspective on how we really should be reading history. The first impetus for the age of discovery was not Europe's yearning for ties with Asia, because remember people talked about Columbus had to find another way to get to Asia to get them spices because he couldn't get across. So it's Genghis Khan and people like that, like, white folks, y'all not coming across here. So this impetus for Asia is there, but as so many of us have been taught in grade school, but rather its centuries old desire to forge trading ties with legendarily rich black societies hidden away somewhere in the heart of darkest West Africa. Iberia's most famous sailors cut their teeth not seeking routes to Asia, but rather plying the coastline of West Africa. This is where they perfected techniques of map making and navigation, where Spain and Portugal experimented with improved ship designs, and where Columbus came to understand the functioning of the Atlantic Ocean, winds, and currents well enough so that he would later be able to reach the western limits of the sea with confidence that no European had previously had before him of being able to return home. So it was all about Africa and the riches that it had there, not so much getting to Asia, but exploiting what Africa had. And as Africa has been exploited and black people have been exploited for the centuries, there's a book called Repair, Redeeming the Promise of Abolition by Katherine Frank. It's just sad that we're not dealing with reparations. We're not dealing with the realities of what really happened to give restitution to those who have been subjugated, oppressed. So she talks about chapter 1, land and the question of reparative justice in the Sea Islands. Chapter 2, black self-governance at Davis Bend. Chapter 3, the ongoing case of reparations. And chapter 4, reparations today. If we're not dealing with repair on a large scale, always is a joke. History is a joke. Alabama and Africa. I found this very interesting because it talks about Booker T and his trips to Africa and trying to create this empire of what he had done there in southern part of the United States, taking it global. And so say the German Empire, we're talking about like Namibia, places that were, colonized by the Cameroon, colonized by the Germans there in Africa. But I found this very intriguing. And this is definitely a must read to understand how Booker T was ridiculed by people like W.B. Du Bois and others because he was trying to get people to work with their hands to create. And that was probably the best thing to do because, education-wise, this system was not trying to educate you right. So Alabama in Africa by Andrew Zimmern. Now, he wrote this in 2010. I found it interesting because the Princeton University did this. And you see the design? There's another design of a book, very similar. This one was done later. This was done in 2021. It's called American Mirror, the United States and Brazil in the Age of Emancipation. So I spent time in Brazil, have done a Fulbright there, traveled there, and the environment and the people are beautiful and focused on change, but it's just moving too slowly. So when you look at America and you compare it to the United States, this is a good book to kind of make those connections by Roberto Sabo. So American Mirror, United States and Brazil. And again, I showed you that one video earlier on about Brazil and it being decimated by the floods. Man, that's not just Brazil. Any other parts of the world are being attacked or being, decimated by the natural disasters, and it could be coming your way. All these books, whatever I might have, could be wiped away in a matter of no time because of natural disasters. So, last book here, not so much natural disasters, but man-made disasters, genocide. Utopias of Race and Nation. Now, this is done way before what we're now seeing going on in Gaza, with how the Israelis are attacking those people in Gaza. This is written in 2003. And the themes, genocides in the 20th century, race and nation and intellectual history, nation, race, and state socialism. The Soviet Union under Lenin and Stalin, the primacy of race, talking about Nazi Germany, racial communism, Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge, and then national communism, Serbia and Bosnian War. So I wonder if there will be a new chapter later on adding what's going on with the Israeli decimation of the people in Gaza and the Hamas movements. Genocide is happening. And guess what? You have people saying that it's not happening. So that brother Jamal Bowman was removed from Congress because of an Israeli-supported group did not like him saying this is genocide. Well, what is genocide? Right. We're now getting to the issue of truth. So in June Truth, you must find the best way to describe what is going on in the world and the reality that's coming from your viewpoint. People are going to have their own different perceptions of what truth is. So we may have a new president in this new election year, and it may not be the president that you suggest and recommend. But guess what? They don't live forever. They die also. So whoever is going to be the president, you still have a mission. That is to protect your community, to look at your environment, and to read and study to make sure that we're not making continual mistakes. It's not going to happen by the system telling you what truth is. You're going to have to seek it on your own. And that does not mean turning on the TV and listening. It means turning off the TV, tuning into yourself, read, study, expose the truth. Thank you for spending some time with me. And again, keep reading and we will be back. Thank you.